Hi everyone, this is Miss Casey again here with our very first reading class of the month July. We're super excited to bring you this series again, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am, and I hope you are excited to also read the books. So this first week we have read Esperanza Rising. Now, as we know from our last month, if you read the whole book, then you'll be good to go. If you read part of it, you still be able to follow along. And even if you haven't read any of it, this project will hopefully inspire you and excite you to read the book that we are inspired by. Alrighty, so again, the book that we are inspired by for today's class, for today's project, is Esperanza Rising. So we'll talk a little bit more about the book and the main events and main points following our story structure, and then we'll go into the project and how all of that is inspired by our book. So keep watching. Alright, you guys, so like I said, today we are going to be inspired by the book Esperanza Rising. Some of you may have read it, some of you may have not, and that's okay. So before we get started on talking about the book and the main points and events, we're going to talk about our actual project. So this is a sample of what we're going to be learning today. We're going to be using the materials oil pastels and watercolors together. We'll be using oil pastels for our figure and then watercolors for our background. Okay, you also want to make sure you have a pencil and then a Sharpie. We are going to be outlining our lines, so you can take a Sharpie or any permanent marker that you have at home to outline all of your lines there. And you also want to use a practice draw and a final draw. Now for your final draw, because we are using watercolors for our background, you want to make sure you have a thick enough paper to hold all of that water. So you can use paper like Bristol paper or watercolor paper, whatever you have that works best for you, but just make sure you have your practice and your final draw also. Alrighty, now before we get into our drawing and our project, we are going to talk about our story structure here for the book Esperanza Rising. So I'm going to move around my supplies just so you guys can focus on the structure that we have here. All right, so for our story structure for Esperanza Rising, we our title and author, as I've mentioned already, our title is Esperanza Rising, and the author is Pam Munoz Ryan. Okay, so that's our title and author. Now for our characters, we have the main character who's actually in the title. Her name is Esperanza, and she's a 13-year-old young girl. And we don't really have we do have many characters, but we don't have too many main characters that the story focuses on. But we have Esperanza, and the story kind of follows along on her family, and then a family that lives with her who's actually the family that Esperanza's family has hired to help and do things around the house and cook and things like that. So this is Miguel, who is a young boy just like Esperanza, and his parents work for Esperanza's parents. So they are pretty much the two main characters. Again, we do have Esperanza's family, like her mom and her dad, her abuelita, and then we have Miguel's parents who work for Esperanza's family. But those are more of supporting characters. So we have Esperanza, who's the main character who the whole book is about, and then we have Miguel, who does end up helping Esperanza. So he is kind of like a supporting character, but more of a main character. And then for our setting, we actually have two main settings. So the book starts out on Esperanza's ranch, or her family's ranch in Mexico, and then after the events happen throughout the plot, then her and her family end up having to go over to California. So it starts out at the ranch in Mexico, and then it ends in California. Alrighty, now for our plot, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we've learned so far in our book. Again, if you haven't read the book, hopefully these things that we talk about in these points, there's going to be much more detail in the book for you to be able to read, but hopefully these points will inspire and excite you to continue reading. So Esperanza, the book starts out with Esperanza living on her family's ranch in Mexico. They are very rich, and so Esperanza hasn't really had to worry about having to do anything or even wanting anything. She basically lives the best life. However, you know, she kind of lives like a queen. She doesn't really have to worry about anything, want anything. It's all pretty much there for her. However, the day before her birthday, an unfortunate tragedy happens. Her father is killed, and her family begins to get threatened by her father's uncles, or sorry, her father's brothers, so Esperanza's uncles, and since they are threatened, they end up having her and her mother have to flee Mexico. So they end up going to California. It's Esperanza, her mother, and then the family that lives with them that works for Esperanza's parents. So they all go to California. And once they go to California, Esperanza ends up having to learn all of these things that she's never had to do at her own ranch in Mexico. She ends up having to work and help at the place that they have gone to in California. So she has to be a ranch hand. She's learning all of these things, again, that she hasn't had to do in Mexico. She ends up having to help her mom when her mom becomes sick, and so she has to learn how to pay bills. She has to save money, so that way, because her abuelita is still in Mexico, and they're trying to save money to bring her abuelita out to California. So there's all of these things that Esperanza, you know, goes from living in Mexico on her ranch, on her family's ranch, and then coming out to California and not having the life that she once had, having to completely change and work and do things to help save her family and save herself, help her mom, help her friends. So she has really gone through all of this tremendous growth throughout the book. And so there is a couple more points that I want to go over, but that is once we get into our climax and solution. So I'm going to stop right there for our book. And then as we go through our drawing and coloring, we'll talk a little bit more about our book, and then we'll bring up our climax about halfway through our project to learn more. Alrighty, so now that we've gone over this first half of our story structure, let's go ahead and get into our project. So again, I'm going to bring over this sample for you. We are going to be doing a practice draw and a final draw. Now, so that way you guys know exactly what we're kind of doing. Our project is being inspired by the book because Esperanza, as I've mentioned, she goes from living this wonderful life. Her and her family are rich. They're living on this beautiful ranch house in Mexico, and then they end up having to flee Mexico to go to California and actually work on a ranch. And so her life completely turns around. She ends up having to work and do things that she is not used to. So she has to adjust her life completely. So with that said, we are going to be drawing either ourselves or Esperanza the character or a different character. It doesn't have to be Esperanza or even ourselves. It could be anyone you want, but you're going to draw someone, and that's why we have this halfway line down the middle. You're going to draw someone with one lifestyle, so, you know, accessories and background that would represent a lifestyle. And then on the other half of the picture, we are going to draw that same person living a completely different lifestyle. So with showing that, we're going to show different accessories, pretty much, you know, the complete opposite. So different accessories, a different background, and we want them to contrast between each other to really show the difference, just like Esperanza's life really had that major shift and change throughout the book. Okay, so I was trying to explain our projects not to give too much away from our second half of our story structure here. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get our practice paper. Your practice paper can be whatever kind of paper you want. Okay. Now you guys are going to be doing your practice draw in pencil, but I'm going to be doing it in Sharpie so you can see my lines better. Now again, we are going to be drawing a person. So for our practice draw, we want to practice how to draw that person. We're not going to focus on any details, and we're not going to focus on the background. So we're just going to practice how to draw that figure, that person. And then once we get into our final draw, that's where we'll add all of our details and talk a little bit more about the person that we are drawing, what their lifestyles are and how to completely contrast that. Okay, so what we want to do first for our practice draw is we are going to split our paper down the middle. Now, to make it a little bit more fun and interesting, rather than just drawing a straight line right down the middle, we're going to draw this wavy line, and you can draw whatever kind of wavy line you want as long as it's nice and wavy all the way down from the top to the bottom of your paper. Once you have that, then we're going to draw the head of our person. So I'm going to be drawing Esperanza, but again, you can draw yourself, you can draw Esperanza with me, or you can just draw a completely different person. So what we're going to do first is we are going to draw an oval right in the middle of our paper. Okay, so it's right in the middle. I have my oval there. Now in my sample, my character or my person has a very distinct chin. So I'm going to show you how to draw a face in that style. You don't have to draw this V kind of chin. You can just leave it a plain oval if you'd like. But again, since this is our practice draw, I'm going to practice that with you guys. So now that we have our oval, we're going to come from this side and we're going to draw a straight line down just a little bit past our oval. Once you have those lines coming down, then you're going to bring it over and you're going to come into a point. And so if your wavy line is right in the middle, you should meet right at that middle wavy line. And then you can kind of, instead of having it super pointy, you can kind of curve it in a little bit so it's not too pointy. But that's how we would do it. So we have this top part of our oval, and then the bottom part of our oval kind of gets a little bit more stylized with that V for the chin. Once you have that, then you can take your eraser and erase the bottom part of the oval that we used as a guideline. Now again, if you didn't want to have a V kind of chin, then you don't have to draw this extra line, and you can just leave your first original oval the way that it is. You don't have to change it or anything. All right, but now that we have our head for our person, next what we're going to do is we're going to draw the neck. Okay, now again, as a little stylized character, I have this very thin neck that kind of comes out to a very wide shoulder, and then the clothes kind of pop out of the neck. And again, that's just a little style characteristic. You can do that with me, or you can completely do it different, however you'd like to draw a neck. But I'm going to draw a neck coming in from the side of the chin and coming out to the left, and the same thing, in to the side of the chin and out to the left, or right. So it starts out thin and then gets wide at the end. Now the reason why this is stylized is because normally we don't really see faces and necks come out this way, especially if we're trying to draw more realistic. Faces people might sometimes have pointier chins than others, but when you're trying to draw realistically, you want to focus on the person that you're drawing. You don't want to just make it up. So that is why this chin is more of a stylized chin than a realistic chin. And so the same thing goes for the neck. So next what we're going to do is for the clothes, and again, if you don't want to draw this kind of neck, then you can just draw the clothes right off of the neck like you would normally do. But for the neck, or for the clothes that I'm going to draw today, I'm going to draw a collar that comes off of the neck. So my lines extend past the neck. So once I have that, then I'm going to draw a line that comes out for the shoulders and then curves down for the arms. Okay, so that's how I'm going to draw my neck and shoulders today for the person that I'm drawing. But again, you can have your neck kind of connect more into the shoulders like they normally would, and that's totally up to you. But now that we have our figure and the basic structure of the head and neck and body, next what we're going to do is we're going to add the details for the face. So we want to think about placement, okay? So face placement. So if you don't know already, the eyes on a head should go about halfway down the face. So if I have my oval here, I'm going to imagine where halfway would be, which is about right here. And that's where I would want to draw my eyes, on each side of this middle line here, because our eyes and our faces pretty symmetrical. So if we were to draw an imaginary middle line down our face, we would have one eye on each side. So that's what we want to do here. Now again, this is just your practice draw, so we're just kind of worrying about size and placement and figuring out what the shapes and lines are for our figure. So for my eyes, I'm just going to draw 2 circles. Now later on, in your final draw, you can completely change your eyes if you would like them to be a little bit more realistic or a little bit more cartoonish. However you'd like to draw your eyes, you can do that in your final draw. But for our practice draw right now, we're just going to kind of figure out where everything goes first. So our eyes are going to go right in the middle of the head, and they're going to come on each side of that middle line in the middle of the face. Once you have the eyes, then you're going to go in between the eyes, just a little bit down in the middle between the eyes and the bottom of the chin, and you're going to draw a curved line, like a letter U, for the tip of the nose. Okay, so that's where the nose should go. And then again, in your final draw, you can kind of change up the way that you would like to draw your nose. But for my nose, I'm going to draw 2 letter C's on each side for the nostrils, the sides of the nose. And then once I have that, right in between the middle of the nose and right in between the nose and the bottom of the head, in the middle, we're going to have our mouth. So I'm going to draw my mouth line. And that mouth line usually represents the middle of your lips. So right above, you would draw your top lip, and right below, you would draw your bottom lip. Okay, so if you'd like to add lips for your person, you can go ahead and do that. If you don't want to add lips, then you can just keep a straight line for the mouth there. And then if you'd like, you can also add some eyelashes. Again, this is more of like a stylized look, so if you have a specific way you want to draw your eyes and your eyelashes, you can do that as well. And then we're going to add our eyebrows right above the eyes. Now we're not going to focus on the hair right now because that's going to be more of our details that we're going to draw for a final drawing, because for our final drawing, everyone's going to get to do basically whatever they want to represent themselves, their character, or Esperanza if you want to follow along with me. But for our practice draw, we just kind of wanted to figure out the size and placement and figure out where everything goes. So we're not going to draw any hair. What we do want to draw are the ears. So ears usually start where the eyes are and then end where the nose is. So on the sides of each side of the head, I'm going to draw this C shape for each ear. Okay, so that's it for our figure. Now the last thing I want us to do is kind of figure out and plan out our background. So all that we're going to do is just draw a horizon line, and you want the horizon line to match up on both sides, even though we're going to be doing a completely different background from this side to this side. So just somewhere, I would say above the ears or around the ears, you want to draw a horizontal line that goes off to the side of your paper and continues on the other side to match up. So you want them to be even with each other. And so I know this doesn't look much like our sample or much like any person right now, especially mine with this crossed out line. But again, that was just to practice and to kind of figure out where everything should go and how everything should be. So if you need a little bit more time with this practice draw, you can pause the video and take as much time as you need and then play when you are ready to come back and continue with us. But if you are ready to finish up your practice draw and move on to your final draw, go ahead and grab your final draw paper now. So I'm going to take this and put my final draw paper on. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start off in the same way that we did our practice draw, but we are going to get more into our details. Okay, so first what we're going to do is we're going to draw that middle line that comes down in the center. So if you didn't really like your middle line from your practice draw, you can change it up a bit here. We do still want to keep it wavy. Draw your wavy line to come down for the center. Okay, and then we're going to draw our oval for the head of the person that we're drawing. So we're going to draw an oval right in the middle of our paper. Now once you have that, again, next I'm going to be adding my stylized chin. You can just leave your oval the way that you'd like, but I'm going to go from the side of the head and bring my lines down a little bit. And then I'm going to bring that into a point right along the bottom of my oval. Okay, so you can see if you have a good oval and you like the size, you just basically come along on the outsides and just add these angled edges. So it's not too different from just a regular oval, it's just going to kind of give it a little style, a little characteristic. So if you'd like to add that, you can follow along. If you don't like to add it, keep your oval the way that it is. But once you have the head, then you're going to draw the neck, and we're going to draw two curved lines, starting out thin and then ending out a little bit wider. Again, if you don't really like this style, you can go ahead and change the neck however you'd like. But once you have the neck, then you're going to draw the collar for the clothes. And again, this collar that I'm adding is a little bit more stylized. The outside edges of the lines kind of extend out past the neck, and normally our clothes kind of follow along the neck and the shoulders. So you can draw it like this, or you can draw it the way you may normally draw your neck and shoulders. But once you have your collar, then you're going to draw the rest of your shoulders. And so I'm drawing my two lines that come out and then down for the arms. All right, so now that I have the basic structure of my figure, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the face details. So this is where you can add whatever kind of eyes, nose, and mouth that you want. Just remember our placement. Okay, so our eyes are going to go halfway down the face. So for the eyes that I'm drawing today, I'm going to draw two circles. You can draw any kind of eyes you want, just as long as they're halfway down the face, one on each side. And then below the eyes, between the eyes and the bottom of the chin, I'm going to draw my nose. And again, this line kind of represents the middle of your head, so I'm going to draw my nose right along that line. And I'm just drawing a curved letter U for the tip, and then I'm going to add two little curved lines on the outsides for the nostrils. And then once I have my nose, next I'm going to draw my mouth, and the mouth usually is placed right between the nose and the bottom of the head. So you're going to start with the middle line of the mouth, and then if you'd like, you can go ahead and add in lips. All right, and then once you have that, you can go ahead and add in any other details on your eye if you'd like. If you want to add a pupil, or whatever kind of eye you drew, you want to add the eyelashes, and then you're going to add in the eyebrows. And then once you have added your face details, we are next going to add our ears. So the ears should start at the eye and end where the nose is. So then once you have all of those face details, and again, you can make that however you'd like. You can change the eyes. They don't have to look like mine. You can change all of your face details. None of that has to look like mine. So if you need a little bit more time, if you're changing anything, go ahead and pause, and then you can pick up where you left off, and we'll be right here. But if you are done, next we're going to work on the hair. So first, in my sample and with what I'm going to be drawing today, the person that I'm drawing has an accessory, so a hat on the top of their head. Okay, now you don't have to have a hat, but I would recommend drawing and thinking about an accessory that you are going to add, something that might go with the clothing, and something that would really help contrast the two lifestyles. So sometimes clothing doesn't really show a difference, but maybe if you have an accessory, like maybe if you had an earring on one side, like if it was from rich to poor, like Esperanza, if you had maybe like a pearl or a diamond earring, and then on the other side you had maybe like a handkerchief or a headband. So you can show the difference between the two accessories and the two lifestyles. So I'm going to be drawing a hat at the top of Esperanza's head. You can draw a hat with me, even if it's not going to be similar to Esperanza's, or you can just draw a completely different accessory. Before the hat, what I'm going to start with first is the rim of the hat, and so that's going to come across the top of the head. Okay, so I'm going to start with the top. I'm just going to draw this curved line that comes up and across. And now I really want to think about the difference and how to make those two hats completely different. So the bottom of the hat here is going to come from thin to thick. It's kind of like a floppy hat. And then the bottom of the hat on the right side is going to be pretty thick, and it's going to be made of straw. So I'm going to have the little jagged end at the jagged line at the end. So that is for the brim of my hat, the very outside small rim. And then once I have that, then I'm going to think about how to change the tops of the hat. So with the hat over here, I'm going to make it nice and elegant, just a curved line. Again, it's kind of going to look like a floppy hat, maybe have a little ribbon line. And then for the hat over here, again, I'm thinking of it as like a straw hat. So sometimes it has this little like flop. But whatever you draw, you do want to try and make it match up to the lines that you have on the other side. So we're going to try and match those up the best that we can to show the contrast a little bit better, the differences. And then again, since it's a straw, I might have some detail here. Make it look a little dirty, make it look, have some texture. So if you need to add any other details or texture lines to your hat or accessory, then you can do that. And then, so I drew the accessory first because the hair is going to come from underneath the hat. So if your accessory is nowhere near your hair, then you can already start your hair and then keep working on your accessory. But it doesn't really matter the order between the hair and the accessory. Either way, next we are going to draw our hair. So now what I'm going to do is for the left side, I'm going to draw some long straight hair, nice and elegant. And then for the right side, her hair, she's a working woman now, and this is for Esperanza. She goes from rich to poor, so now she works, and so her hair would get tangled and messy and dirty if it was long and down. So I'm going to have it pinned back. Okay, so for the left side, I'm going to draw this long wavy line down for her hair, and add some jagged lines at the bottom to show that it's down, and connect it into the neck. Okay. And then for the outside here, I'm going to have a little hair tie and then some jagged lines for the hair that comes out of the tie to show that it's back. Once you have that, then you can also add the inner hairline that comes across the forehead if anything is coming out from the hat. If you don't want any inner hairline, you don't have to add it. But basically that comes from the side of the ear and then just comes across the whole top of the head above your eyes. So I'm just going to add this jagged line here to show where the hair comes out. And so once I have that, again, if you have any details that you'd like to add or texture lines that you want to add, you can go ahead and add that. So I'm just going to add some curved lines here. Some of them can kind of match up to these little jagged lines that you have. But once you've added your texture and details into your hair, next what we're going to work on are the clothes. So for the clothes, again, you really want to show the difference. So for the left side, I'm going to add like a nice maybe like ribbon or ruffled kind of shirt or sleeve of a dress. Of course, we only are going to be able to see the sleeves. So you want to think about what you might be able to see on one side versus the other. And so what I'm going to do for this side is I'm going to draw a curved line for the sleeve, and then I'm going to add just a couple of ruffles there. Maybe I'm going to add some ruffles on the collar to make that stand out. And then over here, again, she's working. You don't really want to have nice clothes on when you're working, and maybe she lost all of her clothes. So going from rich to poor, you know, you don't really have all of the great extravagant things that you once had. So she's working, and in my sample, I had made her with a rolled up t-shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in here as well. And just some curved lines to show that it is rolled up and coming out. Her arm is coming out from underneath. Okay. So once you have added in your clothing and you've added your details and texture lines, anything that you'd like to add for your clothing, then that is it for our figure. That is all we want to draw and add. So next what we're going to do is, again, focusing on the type of lifestyle that you've added for your person on the left and then person on the right, or they're the same person, but for the left and the right. Now we're going to think about our background. So in our practice draw, we drew our horizontal line to kind of imagine and picture what our background would look like. So we're going to start out with that horizon line. Okay, so again, right above the ear somewhere, you're going to draw a horizontal line, but this time you want to go from the side of your hair or whatever is the furthest out, and then go all the way to the end of your paper and continue that line on the other side. Once you have your horizon line, you're going to think about the story behind the person that you're drawing. If you're drawing Esperanza, she goes from a beautiful ranch house to working as a ranch hand. So we might have the difference be her house on the left, and on the right it would be a landscape of the ranch from the outside, because she no longer lives in the beautiful house. So depending on what your story is and who your person is and what you're showing, then you can go ahead and show the differences there. I recommend not adding too many details, and since we are using watercolors, you want to think about big areas. If you have too many small areas, that's going to be really hard to paint in. Okay, so I'm going to start over here with my ranch house. I'm going to add a door at the very top, like an arch door, because that's super fancy. And then maybe a little gate that is over here on the side. And then maybe some details for the front top of the house, like a window or two. And they're going to be arch windows. If you're drawing Esperanza's house like me, if you want to maybe add any other details, that's up to you. And then I'm going to leave my grass simple. Again, we want to have big areas because we're coloring in with watercolor. So for my right side, the outside of the ranch in California, I'm going to have a big sun to show that it's bright and sunny. She's working outside. Then I'm going to maybe have some hills in the distance. Okay, and then I'm going to have these crop lines. Now, if you've never seen a farm or a ranch, you may not know what crop lines are, but basically farmers and ranchers, they have plans for their land, and they basically plan out where their crops are going to be planted. They space it out in a very specific measurement, and so everything is planned very well, and it's very well thought out. So usually, if you're looking at a farm or a ranch, you might see these lines of crops that just kind of line up along with each other down these aisles. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm representing here with those lines. But once you have your background details, and again, make sure that you keep it big, large areas. But once you have that, then that is all you need to draw for your background, and then that is all that we are going to do for our final draw. So I'm going to go ahead and close up my Sharpie. If you need a little bit more time with your drawing, this is our final draw, so we're going to get started coloring right after. So make sure that you are completely happy and completely done with everything that you would like to add for your drawing before we start our coloring steps. Definitely pause the video if you need that extra time. What I'm going to do next before we get into our coloring steps is I'm actually going to bring out my handy dandy story structure chart here again, and we're just going to talk a little bit more about our book here. Okay, so I try to explain to you guys why we have the two different lifestyle drawings that we made here. I tried to explain it the best that I could without revealing our climax and solution and rest of the story. So now I'm going to explain. So as we've said so far, we know that Esperanza had to flee Mexico with her mom, and they went from living in a beautiful ranch house in Mexico to having to live and work on a farm, a ranch in California. You know, Esperanza having this big adjustment in her life has had to go through so many different challenges along the way. We read through all of that in the book. We read through all of the different conflicts that she encounters, whether they're with a specific person or with herself. But throughout the book, we see a big change and a huge amount of growth between Esperanza, her life, and things that she has to take responsibility for. So she ends up growing and learning so much. And so our climax basically is, so again, she had to help her mom save money to have Abuelita come over to California because Abuelita has stayed in Mexico, and her mom became sick. So Esperanza was basically helping her mom do all of these things. She was helping her mom pay bills, helping her mom save money. So she really had to be super responsible at a very young age. So she's wondering, you know, if life is even going to get any better. She's worried about her abuelita. But at the climax, we have Miguel, who is her friend. He had moved with her from Mexico to California because his parents worked for her parents in the ranch house in Mexico. So Miguel, who is one of our main characters, he ends up bringing Abuelita to California, and that proves to Esperanza, and I don't want to give out the information on how all of that happens, but that is where our climax happens, is Miguel brings Abuelita to California, and that ends up proving to Esperanza that everything will be all right in life in California. There is no need to go to Mexico. There's no need to worry about her life back in Mexico. She has a new life now. Her family is now safe. They're all together, and she ends up figuring out and realizing that Esperanza does not need to be rich with materialistic things or money or big extravagant houses and, you know, just the materialistic idea of being rich. You don't need to have all of those things in order to feel rich. If you're happy and you have your family and everyone is safe and you are feeling okay, then you are already rich. So Esperanza found a new form. She has become richer in becoming poorer. And so that's kind of the idea of this book, is to show that it's okay to start over. So I've kind of went a little too far ahead, but our climax, Abuelita finally makes it to California with her family. Miguel is the one who brings her over. For our solution, as I said, after Abuelita has come to California, they are now safe. Esperanza's uncles no longer have power over her family, so her family is safe. They're all together, and so this is where Esperanza realizes that that she has become richer in a sense, as she is still poor. So she has this new life now, and she feels that it is better than she's ever had. So she gets a great amount of growth and realization from this. So the moral of our story is that, again, it's okay to start over, and with being determined, you can create sometimes a better life than what you've imagined or what you've had in the past. So she comes from what she thought was a wonderful life. She didn't have to do anything. She had everything she wanted. She didn't have to care or worry. But going from that to the complete opposite, having to work, having to worry about her mother and her abuelita and how to save her family and how to um, save money and pay bills and things like that. All of those worries didn't mean anything because she had her mom, she eventually got her abuelita, she had all of these friends and all of this greater sense of richness that she probably didn't feel when she had all of that, all of those wonderful and extravagant things. Another moral that we can find in this book is determination. So, because she is so determined to get Abuelita over to California, she's so determined to help her mother, to save her family, and just to be the best young girl, the best person that she can be with the circumstances that she now has. She stays determined to figure everything out, to get where she needs to be, to help her mom, to get Abuelita, to better herself and to be, again, a better person. So we also see a lot of determination. And from 1 year before Esperanza's birthday to the very end of the book, where it kind of gets back to her birthday, we have a full year, and we've seen Esperanza grow into this beautiful 14-year-old who has had to go through a lot of challenges, but has come out the other side even stronger and done so well for herself. So, with all of that said, I do want to ask you guys a question, and that's going to be part of our application. And then that also brings us back to our project. So, our application here is going to be, how would you feel if you had to live a very different lifestyle than you currently live? So, whether this was personal when you did your drawing and you made it of yourself, or of a completely different person, or you drew Esperanza like I did, I still want you to think about that question. How would you feel if you had to live a completely different lifestyle than you currently live in? It doesn't have to be from rich to poor or, something like that. It can even be like if you lived in a completely different country, or if you lived in a completely different state, or if you, whatever lifestyle, if maybe you lived somewhere where technology is just so big, like it is now. If you love video games and you love watching TV, maybe you live somewhere where all of that doesn't exist, or it does exist, but you're not allowed to use it. There's some cultures that believe certain things in society um, are either not the greatest or that they're not the most important. So they live a completely different lifestyle than others do. And so you can think about that and how your life can be completely different than what it is now. Okay, and so that's what I want you guys to think about. And again, even if you didn't do that for your specific drawing here, it's still a great question to think about. And it also helps us to be grateful for the life that we do have and for the life that we live. And we can, learn a lot from Esperanza. And even though she had to learn a lot along the way, she still, again, was determined, and she did learn, and she came to be a better person 1 whole year later. And she feels so much better. And like I said, she feels richer. She feels much richer than she has ever had before in being poor. Okay, and that, I think that is a strong message, and that has a lot to say about many things that we possibly could go through in life. So, with all of that said, if you are ready, then you can go ahead and now we're going to take our Sharpie and outline all of our pencil lines. Now, one thing I didn't tell you guys, I mentioned it in our practice draw, but I forgot to mention it for our final draw. But if you did this stylized chin with me, you do want to make sure that that extra line from the oval that we had originally had is erased. So same thing goes for any other lines that you may need to erase, like the top of the oval here. Once you've added the hair, and if you added a hat or anything else that you no longer need, you want to make sure that you erase that before you outline, because you don't want to confuse yourself and accidentally outline lines that you do not need. Okay, so once you've erased everything that you don't need, you can take your Sharpie or your permanent marker and outline all of the lines that you have on your paper that you do want to keep. All right, now if you're not done outlining, you can pause the video and continue working and then play when you're ready. But if you are ready, next what we're going to do is start our first coloring step. So we're going to start with our oil pastels. And so first what we want to do is we are going to use oil pastels on our whole front figure. Now some of these areas are going to be big, so it may take you a little bit more time than others, or than me. And then if that's the case, you can pause the video and take as much time as you need to color in that area. But the main thing is that using our oil pastels in larger areas can be a little tricky because it takes a lot of time, and we're, holding our pastel for a very long time. So at any point during these coloring steps, if you also need a break, just because your hands start to hurt, you can go ahead and stretch your hands, and you can pause the video and just take a little break to help yourself, okay? So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a skin color for my person. Actually, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my permanent marker, and if you have eyes or any large areas you need to fill in with black or dark permanent marker, then I recommend doing that now. You would be able to, if you'd like, to fill in large areas using your oil pastel with black, but that is a very powerful color, and you want to try and keep it as controlled as possible. So if you were to use the oil pastel, it may smudge in other areas of your picture. So if you feel confident that you can keep it controlled, then you can go ahead and do it that way instead. But if you are able to and you have your Sharpie, then I recommend coloring in any large areas that you have on your paper with your Sharpie or your permanent marker. But once you have those filled in, then you can take a skin color. And I'm going to take this light beige, and you're just going to start filling in the head, ear, and the neck, any place you see skin. So for Sharpie and oil pastel, you can actually just color right over the oil pastel. For any large areas, like I have my big black circles for the eyes, and then I have this space for my lips. Any large areas like that, you want to try and color around. If you accidentally color inside, it is not a big deal, but I recommend just trying and outlining around areas that you wouldn't want to color in. Okay, but then once you have those areas outlined, you can start just coloring in. And again, any thin lines or small areas you can just color over, and that will be fine. And then once you guys are done coloring in your skin, you want to double check. You don't want to forget any big areas like the neck or even the sides of the arms where the sleeves end. So you want to double check on any areas like that. Now you also want to make sure you get all those white spots every time you fill in with oil pastels. You press hard, use short strokes, and fill in all of those white spots. So your hands might start getting a little tired at this point. Again, anytime you need a little break to stretch your hands, you can do that. Just pause the video and then play when you are ready to get back to it. So once you're done with the skin, next what you're going to do is you're going to color in the hair. So you're going to choose a color for the hair. It can be any color that you want. Since Esperanza is from Mexico, I'm going to be using a dark brown for her hair. But even if you're doing Esperanza with me, you don't have to do brown for the hair. You can choose any color that you want. So what I'm going to do now is just going to color over right on top of the Sharpie lines that I had for the texture. I'm going to be careful now that I've colored in my face. I want to make sure that I don't color inside the face and mix my oil pastels together. If you accidentally do, it's okay. They, especially if you use like a tan color and a brown for the hair, if you use colors that are similar to each other, they will mix pretty nicely, and then you can always probably mix back in your light color from the skin or anything like that. But even if they don't mix well together, I'm sure it will be fine. But you do want to try your very best to avoid getting it into the skin. Now if you had these extra texture lines and you're coloring over them, if you have a light enough color, what you can do is you can take a darker shade of that color and then trace over those detail lines to bring them back in with oil pastel. Since my brown that I'm using for the hair is pretty dark and my lines are black, what I could also do is take a lighter shade and go along those detail lines to add some highlights into the hair. So you can kind of work in either way, it's up to you. Once you have added in the hair, again, double check, make sure you get all those white spots colored in, make sure you have any chunks of hair that you may have missed. Double check on any of that. And then what happens when you use oil pastels is that you get a lot of little, I like to call them crumbs, that kind of fall onto your paper, build up around your oil pastel. And if that happens, you can just take a paper towel and then just twist your oil pastel right inside of the paper towel and it will clean that off. If you have any on your paper, you can just tap your paper and those will all fall off as well. You never want to kind of wipe it off. You can try and just take one finger and maybe pick it up with a finger, but keep it inside of the area that it has the color, because if you wipe, then it's going to wipe off on the rest of your paper and you don't want that color to smudge into any other areas, especially in your background because we're using watercolors for our background. Alrighty, so now that I'm finishing up with the hair, again, if you want, you can choose a dark shade and you can go over those texture lines, or you can choose a lighter shade and you can go right over those texture lines and add just a little bit of extra color into your hair. You guys may not be able to see all those lines that I've added. Here, let me try it with white. Okay, so you can kind of add in just some highlights to the hair. All right, but once you have done that, then next what we're going to do is color in our clothing and accessories. So I recommend doing those similar colors. I'm going to make my hat on the left side match my clothes on the left side. But if they're not going to be similar colors and you just want to do your best to create a good contrast and opposite of colors on each side. So thinking about contrast and how colors contrast, you can possibly use like complementary colors. Those colors seen side by side really adds a good contrast to your paper or to your picture. So complementary colors are colors like red and green, purple and yellow, or orange and blue. So you can do some colors like that, or you can choose any colors that you want, just as long, again, you want to have a good enough contrast between the left side and the right side. So one thing that I saw that I forgot to color in was the lips for Esperanza. So if you don't have lips, you don't need to worry about this. But if you do have lips and you didn't color them in, then you want to make sure to get those. All right. So I'm going to be coloring in my hat on the left side. I'm going to make it pink. Again, she goes from rich to poor, so I'm thinking of colors that a young girl, when she's super wealthy, may have. And I'm going to make this ribbon in between a darker shade of pink. Now when you're coloring in with oil pastels, again, you want to press hard and use these short strokes. If you're not using oil pastels, I recommend to color in the figure with any material. I mean, any material would work, but you do want to try to use a material that works best for smaller areas. So like materials like color pencil, crayons, let me think what else. Color pencils, crayons. You can even possibly do chalk pastel. It just might get a little bit harder in the smaller areas, but I think these are pretty, medium-sized areas where chalk pastels may be able to work. But probably colored pencils and crayons or oil pastels would be the best material for the figure in the middle. And then for the background, if you don't have watercolor, you can continue with oil pastels if that's all you have, and you can just use the side of your oil pastel to fill in the larger areas. Same thing with crayons if that's all you have. You can use the side instead of the tip, and you can fill in the whole background that way. If you're using colored pencils for the figure, a good material that works best with color pencils and that would really help with the larger areas would be chalk pastels for getting those big areas. And then another material that would work best for the big areas might be, actually, I'm going to go with this one. Watercolors, if that's all you have, you can easily get these smaller areas using a small brush, and then the bigger areas using a big brush, or acrylics if that's what you're using. This can work for any material that you do have. Just try your best. Do the best that you can. But if you are using oil pastels, keep checking your color. Clean them off when you need to. Clean off your paper when you need to. And you also, since we're using many different colors, some of the oil might get onto your fingers. You can also clean off your fingers when you need to. I recommend keeping a wipe close by. Alrighty, so again, like I said, this is going to be a straw hat. So I'm going to take this gold that I have here, and I'm going to color in that hat. Alright, but once you have all of your clothes and accessories filled in, that is all you need to color for your figure. And next we're going to work with our watercolors for our background. So if you are all ready, then you can go ahead and gather up your next materials, your watercolors, and you can, if you need to, skip ahead for that next step. So for the clothes, I'm going to have kind kind of like a jean material. So I'm going to use a dark blue for the shirt, and then since it is rolled up, I'm going to use a light blue to show that it is rolled, the sleeve is rolled up. Now again, I know that we're just finishing up with our oil pastels, but especially since you are done, I recommend stretching out a little bit, taking the time to stretch your hands, relieve them of their duty for a little break, and then you can pause the video and play it once you are ready to get back into it. But now that we are done with our oil pastels, again, if you need to, you can take a wipe close by or a damp paper towel and clean off your hands. All right, so now we're going to work on our background. And for our background, what we want to think about is atmospheric perspective. That is a way to make your pictures look a little realistic, but it also helps, even if you're not doing a realistic picture, it just helps kind of make whatever you're drawing look, especially a background, look far away. And it helps to add perspective. So to make my mountains look super far away, I'm going to be using a very light, muted color. And then same thing goes for basically all of the colors in my background. I'm going to be using a light color, and I'm going to make them look like they are further in the background. So I'm going to start out with my large brush, and I'm going to start out with my right side. So on a farm or a ranch, sometimes you might have green, a green farm, but usually you kind of maybe see multiple colors like browns and greens and things like that. But I'm going to go with different shades of brown. So I'm going to take a little brown here, and I'm going to color in every other stripe. So if you're following along with me, you can go ahead and take a brown just like me. And then we're going to be coloring in every other stripe. Whatever background you painted in or you drew in, then you're just going to paint that the way that you think it should be painted. But I'm going to keep my brown nice and light because, again, I want to show that it's far away. That is how atmospheric perspective works. It helps with our perspective by using color. Things that are closer to us are usually going to have the most color, brightest of color, the most detail, and things that are further away are going to get lighter and have less detail. So I'm going to use a yellow-orange to get a different kind of shade and fill in the rest of my stripes. So I'm going to keep it light. Now, when you're using watercolors, you do want to try and manage your water the best that you can. The use of water is how our watercolors get activated. That's how we use them. But if you use too much water, then your color gets a little bit too light. And if you use a little bit of water, too little water, then your color will get a little too dark. So when you're using watercolors, if it's your first time, or even if it's your maybe 10th time, 15th time, you always want to keep that in mind, how to manage your water. So now I'm going to use a dark blue, but I'm going to keep it light to paint in my mountains. Now, mountains aren't usually blue, but atmospheric perspective, if you guys have ever looked at mountains off in the distance, even like past the horizon line at the ocean, or when you're driving with your parents, sometimes you guys might see a hint of blue off in the distance where the mountains would be, and that's because of atmospheric perspective. We know that mountains are green or maybe sometimes brown, but because they're so far away, they look a little blurry. We don't really see the detail or as much color as if we were up close. So they kind of lose that color, and they get this light bluish kind of color. Okay, once you have the hills colored in, then you can go ahead and paint in the sky. And again, you want to make your paints as light as possible. Now if you have a sun like me and it's a pretty big area, you want to try your best to paint around it, especially because if you're painting with, like, say, an orange for your sun, orange and blue are complementary colors, so when they mix together, it will make like a muddy kind of color. They don't mix well, they just, if they sit next to each other, then they create a good contrast, but they don't really mix well together. Okay, so once you have your sky painted in, then you can go ahead and choose a color for your sun. You can use yellow or a little bit of orange. Now, if you have a little bit too much water in your brush, I always recommend having some paper towels next to you anytime you're painting, because then you can kind of wipe off that brush and clean up a little bit of that water. Alright, so now for my other side, it's a ranch house and a beautiful house. So I'm going to start with my ground. I'm going to get a light green. Now, when you're using watercolors with oil pastels, so for example, my hair has oil pastels in it, and I'm painting with watercolors right next to the hair. Usually, you don't have to worry about those colors touching, or those materials touching, because oil and water do not mix. So some of you may already know that, but if you don't know yet, you can just go right up to the edges. You don't really have to worry about trying to paint around small areas when you have oil pastel next to those areas, because oil pastel will not pick up the water. It will just kind of fall right off. Okay, but once you have your ground painted in, or whatever you have on that side, if you're painting the ranch house with me, once you have the ground painted in, I'm going to make a very light shade of brown to paint in the house. Now, the reason why it's important to have a vinyl paper that is able to hold all of this water is because if you don't, then all of the water might rip your paper. And you guys worked so hard on your drawing and your coloring so far, and you don't want that to happen. So it's always important that you're using the right paper for the material that you're using. So I'm going to take a darker brown. I'm going to paint in this door here. Again, I'm just painting right over my oil pastel because the water will not mix with it. Just want to get that door a little bit darker. Then I'm going to maybe take just a little bit of paint, a lot of brown to get a darker color and get just a little bit of my details that I want to be darker. Okay, so you're just going to start finishing up your background, whatever you need to do to finish that up. And then once you are done, then that is it for our picture today. So I'm just going to take a little bit of light blue, paint in this window here to make it look like glass. And then that is it for my picture. So if you are still finishing up your picture and you need a little bit more time, then you can definitely pause the video where you're at, and then you can finish up what you need to and Next, we're going to be reviewing what we learned today and talking just a little bit more about our book, and then that is it for this video. So, if you are done, then great job to you guys. Thank you for working so hard, and I can't wait to see what you guys have created. I really hope if you guys are done, then you are able to share to our Facebook page, Fibo Village. You can ask your parents, and then they can share your beautiful, amazing artwork with us. I would really love to see it. And also, if you have a story that goes behind, either if it's a personal story or a made-up story with a made-up person, then you can share that with us, and that would be really fun to read also. So just to review, we learned and did a project inspired by Esperanza Rising. Okay, she's a young girl who had to leave her home, her beautiful, rich home in Mexico, to go to California because her family was being threatened. She ended up having to adjust to her life in California, having to work and save up money, help her mom pay bills, and with all of that change that she went through, she learned so much, and she developed and learned responsibility, and it changed her. So thank you guys again for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed this project and the book that we read. If you didn't get to read the book, then I really hope that this project inspired you to read it. And I enjoyed reading the book, and I enjoyed doing the project with you guys. So again, if you'd like to share your artwork, please do on our Facebook page. I'd really love to see and read any stories that you have behind it. But thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you again next time for our next book. So have a good one.